The Bracero Program was a labor agreement between the United States and Mexico that allowed Mexican farm workers to come to the U.S. to work on farms during World War II and the post-war period. The program was created in 1942 to help alleviate the labor shortage in the U.S. caused by the war. Under the program, over 4.5 million Mexican workers came to the U.S. to work in agriculture, earning wages that were higher than they would have earned in Mexico. Many of these workers were from rural areas and had little education, and they saw the Bracero Program as a way to support their families back home with an opportunity that didn't exist for them. The Bracero Program was administered by the U.S. Department of Labor and the Mexican government, and it required that workers be treated fairly and provided with adequate housing and food. Workers were required to sign a contract that outlined their wages, hours, and working conditions. The program was important because it was a legal way for Mexican workers to come to the U.S. and earn money for their families back home. For many of these workers, the program was a lifeline, as Mexico was facing its own economic struggles at the time. It was also a godsend for the U.S. economy. With so many young men drafted into the war, there was a shortage of workers at home. However, the program was not without its own controversies. Critics of the Bracero Program argued that workers were exploited and mistreated, and that the program was used to keep wages low for American workers. Many Mexican workers who came to the U.S. under the program faced discrimination and racism, and were often treated as second class. One of the most famous incidents involving the Bracero Program was the 1942 Sleepy Lagoon murder case, in which several Mexican-American men were wrongfully accused of murder and convicted. The case sparked outrage in the Mexican-American community and led to calls for better treatment of Mexican workers in the U.S. Despite its challenges, the Bracero Program continued to be an important source of labor for U.S. farmers. The program was expanded in the 1950s to include other industries such as railroad construction and mining. But as the program continued, criticism of it grew. Labor unions and civil rights organizations argued that the program was unfair to American workers and exploited Mexican workers as well. In response, the U.S. government made some changes to the program, such as increasing the minimum wage for workers and providing more oversight. The Bracero Program ended in 1964, but its legacy still remains today. Many of the Mexican workers who came to the U.S. under the program stayed and became permanent residents. The Bracero Program may have been imperfect, but it played an important role in the history of both the U.S. and Mexico. It provided much-needed labor during a time of war and economic uncertainty, and helped shape the future for both countries. While the program was not without its flaws, it remains an important part of our shared history.